So I was one of those kids who watched 6 hours of television a day. And while I loved the shows, the commercials drove me crazy. They were just so tedious and boring. And I couldn't understand how people could fall for the products. There was one series of ads for a Cascade dishwashing detergent that was particularly stupefying. The ads revolved around these couples who were about to entertain guests, and they'd take out their glasses and would be horrified to discover that there were spots on them. So as they furiously cleaned their glasses, the voiceover let us know if they'd only used Cascade with sheeting action, this terrible situation wouldn't have happened. Really? Spots on glasses? Sheeting action? Who cared about spots on glasses? Well, many years later, my future in-laws were going to be coming over for dinner, and I took out our glasses, and you guessed it, spots. So I looked at the glasses for a minute, thinking, should I do something about this? Because while I didn't think that there was any problem with spots on glasses, I wasn't so sure that my future in-laws felt the same way. So I washed them. And as I was washing them, I actually found myself wondering, if I'd only used Cascade with sheeting action, would this problem, because now, of course, spots on glasses have become a problem, have happened? You know, if the advertisers for Procter & Gamble products, of which Cascade is one, ever watch this talk, they are going to be cheering, because, boy, did they do their job well. They managed to make somebody who could care less about spots on glasses feel insecure enough to actually consider buying their product. Which brings me to this question. What part of our freedom have we given away to those who would sell us products? Now, in the United States, we like to think that we're free, and in many ways we are. We have freedoms that were hard-won and which many people around the world yearn for, and I don't want to diminish this. In the context of our critically important freedoms of speech and religion and assembly and petition, the manipulations of corporations who are arguably just exercising freedom of speech might seem unimportant, perhaps even frivolous, but they're not. Our consumer culture, which has conflated happiness with the acquisition of products and joy with the consumption of terribly unhealthy, environmentally devastating, and cruelly produced foods, and social acceptance with spot-free glasses and brand-name clothes, takes its toll. It takes its toll on our health, on our communities, on other species, and on the environment which sustains us. Which is why I think that we need to give young people the tools to think critically about commercial messages so that they can take back their freedom to make informed, conscious, and conscientious choices. Now, most kids don't even realize they need this freedom. Many think that they're unaffected by commercial messages, especially because with today's technologies, they can just skip them. But this is just an illusion. They are more attached to their brands than ever. And while they know a lot about brands, many of them are biophobic, that is, averse to and sometimes scared of the natural world, and illiterate about the destruction that we are wreaking on the ecosystems which sustain all life on Earth, including our own. Too many of them think that freedom means having the option to choose Aeropostale over American Eagle, or KFC over McDonald's, or having enough money to buy the newest iPhone or iPad. But freedom is more than just product choices and our right to advertise them. Real freedom includes the ability to live in a safe and healthy and just society. Real freedom means having access to nutritious, unprocessed foods. Real freedom denotes the capacity to make choices based on our deepest values, not on others' manipulations or control. So I think that we need to educate children for real freedom. I want every young person to be able to do what Toto did in The Wizard of Oz, pull back the curtain and reveal the fraudulent messages that have so deeply infiltrated their minds and so dangerously altered their desires. So as a humane educator, somebody who teaches about global issues and offers students the knowledge and the skill to be engaged choice makers and change makers for a better world, I try to be like Toto, and so I do a lot of media literacy work, and I want to share some of that work with you. And I'm going to start with an icebreaker called fill in the blanks. So I'm going to start the beginning of each sentence, and you just shout out the missing words. Do the, do. Taste the, rainbow or difference. Depends on what year you saw those commercials. Just, do it. Got, everyone knew that one. Give me a break. Well done. So I'm guessing that you can all identify a company based on its logo, but can you identify a company based on its signature color? Any guesses? Navy blue plastic bag? The Gap, yes. And most students do recognize that bag as the Gap, even though it's a really ordinary color. It's not like the Tiffany's robin's egg blue, which, by the way, the company has managed to trademark. Now, what about recognizing a brand or a product based solely on the first letter of its name? Practically every student can recognize almost all of them. So I asked those students, how do they know all this? You know, most of them have no idea how they learned it all. And some of them are actually a bit shaken by the sudden realization that without their awareness or their consent, they have become so very knowledgeable about so very many products. What do we give up when we give in to brands that spend so much to keep us loyal? What do we give up when we give in to brands that spend so much to keep us loyal? Now, with that question in mind, I invite students to collect advertisements that are aimed primarily at them. So one of the students brought in this ad, which is actually for an internet service provider, if you can believe it. You'll notice the two silver dots over the woman's nipples. They're actually stickers. And if you lift them up, the text underneath reads, "You getting your yayas" on one side and "sex sells and why not" on the other. Now, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner where the mouse arrow sits, the text reads, "Enter here," although what we see is "enter her," because the final E in that word "here" is such a pale color that it's essentially invisible. The student who brought in this ad was horrified at the extent to which women were being so shamelessly and relentlessly exploited. Well, another student brought in this ad exclaiming, "This is disgusting." Do you see why she said this? Take a look at that model's photoshopped feet. Levi's is not just depicting the sort of typical objectification of women. They're now adding this new sick twist, the actual mutilation of a woman's body. Now, I work at the Institute for Humane Education, where we offer graduate programs, and one of our graduate students created an activity that was designed to show that advertisers don't actually sell products. They sell the fulfillment of our deepest needs and desires and then associate that fulfillment with products. And she demonstrated this by taking some ads and covering up the text and then asking us if we had any idea what products were actually being marketed. And it was fascinating. We knew immediately what deep needs or desires the ads were promising to fulfill, but we had no idea what they were actually marketing. So in this one, the desire is romance and sex for young heterosexuals. So what might provide that? Gum. Because we all know how sexy chewing gum is. Now in this one, there are a variety of needs and desires that these wolves evoke: power and strength and individuality and independence within a community. So what product might provide that? Chewing tobacco. And as the text says, leaders stand apart, but not alone, which you better hope is true, because if you're a leader who gets throat or mouth cancer, you really don't want to stand alone. Although I wonder whether the advertiser is more obliquely referring to the fact that if you chew tobacco, you probably want to stand apart so you don't spit on your friends. Now, when young people are given the opportunity to analyze ads and answer questions about them, they begin to take back some of their freedom from the ad's power to influence them. So let's take a closer look at this ad. So in the image, we see a young man in the lotus position sitting in front of all of his stuff with a Ford Ranger at the top. And the text underneath reads this: Spence put a new twist on an old philosophy. To be one with everything, he says, you gotta have one of everything. That's why he also has the new Ford Ranger, so he can seek wisdom on a mountaintop, take off in hot pursuit of enlightenment, and connect with Mother Earth by looking no further than into the planet's coolest four-door compact pickup. He says it gives him easy access to inner peace, which makes him one happy soul. Now, obviously, this ad is meant to be humorous, but whether an advertisement is wryly associating the fulfillment of a deep need or desire with a product, or doing so without acknowledging its inherent absurdity, the effect is similar. The target audience for this ad, young men, are as likely to be drawn to the message that a Ford Ranger brings happiness, if not enlightenment, as if it were presented seriously. In fact, maybe even more so, because they get to be in on the joke, which is cool. Now, every product has a story, and I'm not just talking about the stories that the marketers spend so much to create. What distinguishes a humane education approach that's designed to invite students to be agents of change for a more just and humane and sustainable world are two questions that you don't usually find in media literacy activities. So after determining the deep need or desire that an ad's promising to fulfill and identifying the target audience, humane educators will ask this question: what suffering, cruelty, and/or destruction is hidden from view? And here's where educating for freedom, for the freedom to live justly, sustainably, and humanely, puts down its deepest roots. Here's where a simple media literacy activity can turn into a unit, a project, a course, even a school's mission. Here's where students can research and learn about the effects of their choices on themselves, on other people, on other species, and on the environment. Now, asking this question about this ad, students could investigate the auto industry, and they could look at our society's choices around fuel use and fuel economy, tax subsidies for fossil fuels and green energy and carbon emissions and oil industry campaign contributions, among many other things. If every student in a class that analyzed this ad were to choose one item from that image and then learn about and share its effects on people, animals, and the environment, imagine how much that class would learn about biology, chemistry, environmental science, ecology, physics, sociology, politics, economics, not to mention the skills that they would gain in math and language arts. After all, the items in this image provide opportunities to learn about plastic, metal, and rubber production, mining, overseas factories, transportation, how we treat people who make our products, their eventual disposal, and so many more issues. They'd even learn about pet overpopulation and the fact that dog breeding contributes to millions of dogs killed every year for lack of homes, just by considering the inclusion of a purebred golden retriever as just one more consumer item. Next, the students would get to explore this question: What product or service would do more good and less harm? And here's where the opportunity for system analysis and systemic change-making arise, because there is so much to consider when looking at this. Whether our consumptive lifestyles and our economy that's built around them are ultimately sustainable and good, whether there are alternative ways to create healthy economies and happy lives that include the products that we want but don't do so at such a great cost. These kinds of questions enable students to become what I like to call solutionaries, who will use their education, no matter what careers they pursue, to solve our persistent challenges and to create a positive difference in the world. Such an education is their ticket to freedom. Without it, they will be at the mercy of unsustainable, highly destructive, and ultimately collapsing systems. As our planet warms, as our population increases, as species become extinct at escalating rates, as resources decline, and as conflicts over those limited resources grow, it is those students who have the knowledge and the skill to transform unhealthy and unjust systems into ones that are sustainable and humane, who will have the greatest success, and who will also ensure that our ecosystems and we survive and thrive. The reason why such seemingly simple activities are so important is because they provide the first step for young people to take back their freedom, to make choices based on their true beliefs, not their manufactured ones. This then paves the way for them to be the kinds of critical thinkers who are able to resist simplistic and manipulative messages wherever they find them. This generation of young people faces unprecedented and potentially catastrophic problems. We owe it to them and to the generations that follow to ensure that they can face those challenges courageously, compassionately, and wisely, to be able to determine for themselves what's important and what isn't, to be able to recognize those systems and those situations that lead us to make dangerous and destructive choices and then to change them. And ultimately, to realize that spots on glasses are only important insofar as they are a metaphor for what obscures our vision from the clear view of the realities before us. Thank you so much.